And we are live, and welcome to the seventh episode of the Sayonara Punk Podcast. And we are live, so if we experience any technical difficulties, please bear with us. I'm here with a new friend of mine, Jeff Willette, and you can also find him on. Go ahead and let him know your Twitch channel.
Hey, I'm that guy Baldrax on Twitch.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and we'll add that to the description of the video later too. Um, yeah, thanks for coming by, and thanks for coming onto the show here.
Yeah, thanks
So,
for having me.
yeah, and so the first question we usually start guests off with is, what's your earliest memory of any sort of media? whether it be TV or movie or a game. Like, think back as far as you can, and what's that first imprint on your brain?
Yeah, that's a hard one because everything gets kind of jumbled up, when
Right.
in those early years. But I mean, the things that I remember the most was basically the very first video game that came out, Pong.
Mm.
We got that in the household early on, and and the what was it called? The Wonderful World of Disney or whatever. Every Sunday, I think, um, they would show movies and TV, or it could be like a documentary or like an outdoors thing sometimes. But it was either the Magical World of Disney or the Wonderful World of Disney. It was a weekly show that came out, and then of course stuff like Star Wars and that hits and it changes everything.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
the
yeah,
mind blowing for everyone, right? That and The Exorcist right around that time, which
yeah,
changed
both,
modern movie going, right?
yeah, yeah. You just yeah. Before that, sci-fi and stuff, it just wasn't as cool, and they thought they could just change the game. And then, of course, that led to the Battlestar Galactica TV show, which our whole family was into, and um, everybody had to be Star Wars at that point. It was
You ever
great.
go to Universal Studios where they have the old school Battlestar? Uh, I guess it was a tram ride, or was it maybe just
Oh
the
yeah,
end of the?
they have the Cylons in there, right?
Yeah, and then
Yeah, the big
they run
toasters.
around and have a fight, and a bunch of like little squibs and explosions would go off around the tram. I think it was just
Oh,
the end of the regular tram ride, like after Jaws. I think
there.
Battlestar was basically the end of the tram.
Yeah, there was a movie that featured that too. It was like they were going through the ride, and I can't remember the movie either, but they featured that tour. Like there was the Jaws thing and the Cylons.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Uh,
so then, what's the first thing you remember just binge watching as a kid, like just over and over, watching the same thing over and over and over?
Boy, because as a kid, we didn't have the ability to do that. It
Mm.
was we had three channels, and on the roof there was this little rotor antenna, and you would dial it into the direction of the TV channel you wanted to watch. So
Oh, your antenna
um,
actually moved on the roof?
yeah, there was a direction you dialed in, and it would slowly like a chink, 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 and it would it would turn until it got to the station. So you'd slowly see the TV station start to come in, as it
There it
got to the
is.
right place. It took 30 seconds to change channels,
Yeah.
and but we only had three, so and you
It-
pretty much knew what was on. But for binge watching, um, I mean, Saturday morning cartoons was the only equivalent I can think of because you'd watch those over and over again. It was the same ones, a lot of
Looney
times.
Tunes.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I loved Johnny Quest. It was like one of my favorites.
Mm.
Um, and but when we actually got like a VCR to watch something, I'm pretty sure the first thing we watched was Star Wars.
Yeah. And
And
that's a great one to binge watch, right?
yeah,
Like as a
yeah,
kid, especially, so much adventure.
yeah. And
Uh,
but for stuff that I've watched, like probably the movie I've watched the most is Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan.
mm.
Uh, kind of my all-time favorite. But yeah, binge watching just as a kid that you just didn't have that.
Right. It was mostly
Um,
until that VHS came out or Betamax.
yeah.
I've been surprised a couple people we talked to were Betamax people, which I didn't know any because we were the VHS family, and totally we ripped every VHS that we could because we had the double VCR, where you could put in the tape and rip it.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so we had a pile of VHSs of ripped VHS. But yeah, a lot of Disney back then. I don't necessarily remember the like I have a faint memory of the Disney kind of show that you're talking about. where it was different
I want to
things,
look it
but
up now. I think
yeah.
it's The Wonderful World of Disney.
Yeah, that part of it, it totally like there's something in my memory where it lights up, but I'm not sure. I think that was just slightly before my time. Just at the front of it. So
Huh.
that you mentioned Battlestar, I was a huge fan. I watched the old Battlestar, but huge fan of the new Battlestar as well. Which I'm sure you
Oh
watched
yeah.
through that, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love the earlier seasons of that. Toward the end,
Yes.
I was kind of like, eh.
I didn't
Like that
mind
last
the
season went about half a season too long. Like
yeah,
they kind of ended it and then they kept going.
and didn't they do it in two parts or whatever? Like they had a half a season and then they did another season to like try and wrap it up better. Because I think there was a bunch of
Uh,
backlash where people
yeah,
were
I think
like,
so.
"Oh, you can't just. What about Starbuck? Finish the Starbucks story." But I'm gonna call. I think that's Edward James' almost best performance ever.
Yeah.
Like when I think about him now, that's the role I see him in my head. Like if you had to
Yeah,
say
true.
name three Edward James Olmos movies, uh, Battlestar's first. It was
Yeah,
it, wa-
I literally am drawing a blank on anything else at this point.
he was the teacher in like the Bad High School Kids movie, which I forget the. It was like the OG Dangerous Mind or whatever it was,
Yeah.
where he teaches them math. Uh, he teaches inner city kids math or whatever. How can I help these kids?
That's
Uh,
right. Okay.
and then yeah,
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on anything else. It's got to be his definitive role as
Yeah. But then of
the
course you
admiral.
do see him in something. He's played some bad guys too, and
Yeah,
I can remember, but yeah, I can't think of anything particular.
and
Yeah.
and that show
Uh,
kind of defined a lot of the new school templates for drama shows. That cliffhanger ending, which like Lost picked up on that right after, where they
yeah.
really in Battlestar mastered that. Right in the last 10 seconds, somebody would be like, all right, when he comes to the door, put a gun to his head and pull the trigger. And then they'd end the episode, and you're like, what? Okay, I
I
gotta
gotta watch.
watch
It's
one
that binge.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the binge mentality where they want you to watch that next one.
Yeah.
Except that was a weekly show, so like, yeah, that's something I do miss though. Like because everybody can binge now and watch everything on their own schedule. You miss that, like the water cooler chat of like, talking about those cliffhangers, and it's like, because now it's just like, oh, I wait till the whole season's aired and then watch it all. It's like, so you can't talk about it in the moment like you used to be able to. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like stuff
definitely.
with Lost and whatnot, where you come in and you go into work and everybody's just like, talking about it and like, can't believe what happened, like,
Yeah. And there
what do
used
the
to be,
numbers mean?
right? There used to be real life watch parties too, where you'd go to
Yeah,
someone's house. I remember tons of people I knew, not that I ever went to one, but had friends watch parties for
yeah,
whatever the latest episode of Friends was. Also, for Survivor when that first came out, it was like a whole thing to go hang out and all watch an episode of something together.
yeah.
Uh,
Game of Thrones was one where people tended to do watch parties and stuff too.
yeah.
And yeah,
Have you
and
seen the
me,
new?
no, I haven't seen the new ones yet.
Oh, it's pretty
But
good.
yeah. Again, this is like, oh, now it's like my wife, she can't remember between episodes a lot of times. So like she likes to do the binging thing, and
Mm,
sometimes even between seasons she has to like watch like the last few episodes, because it's like, what happened last time? It's like, because we have
yeah,
so much media now, that
it is a lot.
it fogs the mind, and it's like, uh
Well, and then haven't you reached that point too with all this media on all these different platforms? You still reach the point of like, ah, there's nothing to watch.
yeah. Yeah, because
Uh,
like we're spoiled with like, uh, there's a lot of bad content out there too,
mm,
and so you have to filter it out and concentrate on the good stuff. Like, my wife just dropped. We started watching Strange New Worlds, Talk about binging. Star Trek, that was a binge show because it was always in syndication.
Yeah.
So early on, yeah, I was watching the original series Star Trek. When you were channel surfing and you found that on, you watched it because it was like couldn't take my eyes away from it.
Yeah, same. And
Yeah,
then
my 3 channels that I was surfing.
right. Yeah, and then that rolled right into Next Generation, watching a ton of
Oh
Picard,
yeah,
and then even
yeah,
into Deep Space Nine. Like those were staples because at that time, like you said, even once it evolved and got a little bigger, there still was maybe what 7 channels at a point, and
yeah.
you kind of knew what you were gonna get. Like, oh, Moonlighting's on, or I was kind of a weird kid, so I would watch Bob Newhart show every night. like
Yeah.
I think I was never a MASH fan because like I just didn't get the humor as a kid, I don't think. So that was
Yeah,
always
I was at an age where that didn't really gel with me, MASH. I was more into like sci-fi and fantasy stuff.
no, I
And
remember being disappointed. I can't remember what was on directly before it, but whatever was on right before MASH, I would always watch. And then when I'd hear the MASH theme song, it was always like disappointing. Like, yeah, you're like, "Ah, okay, I guess TV time is done."
it's kind of a
Yeah,
downer tune too, the MASH theme song. It's kind of
it
like,
was, yeah. It's a show about war. Like
yeah.
yeah, and
Uh,
the medical part of war where like everyone's injured in the show too, so you're just like, ugh.
I was more into
Nope.
Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, Hogan's Heroes was fun. Uh
Hogan.
so what shows have you and your wife been watching recently? Like what do you guys watch together as your
Oh yeah.
staple?
So we were trying to watch Strange New Worlds because I heard great things about it. Star
I
Trek
haven't even
with
heard of this.
Pike. Oh yeah, it's on Paramount Plus. It's
Brand
Captain
new?
Pike. Yeah, it's 1 season in so far.
Okay.
And did you watch Star Trek Discovery at all?
I tried some and
Yeah.
then I realized it was going to shatter fond memories of Next Generation, so I shelved it.
Yeah, it wasn't very good, but they did introduce Captain Pike, which was in the original pilot for the original series of Star Trek. He was
So
the
it's
captain.
canon.
Yeah, and so there's Spock is in it, and it's basically 5 to 10 years before the original series, essentially.
Hmm.
And uh, so we heard a lot of good things about it, and I started watching it. And it's more episodic, so it's a little bit more like the original, like in Next Generation and all that. But it's missing something. And my wife was like, "We got 3 episodes in, and it's like it's not bad. It's just we don't feel connected to it, and you don't feel connected to the characters. You know, you don't really care about them all that much." And so she just dropped it, and she's like, there's better shows to watch, and
Yeah. Let's dig into that a
um,
little bit because that's a thing. There's such a fine line on where uh, this is what we talked about before too, a few times as far as things becoming more plot based instead of character based, because a plot based script is much easier to achieve, right? It's all about
yeah,
going from A to B, and there's characters on that journey, but they're kind of inconsequential to the journey that's happening from A to B, and that's a much easier shoot because you don't need great acting to do it. You don't need great writing to do it. You just need to have cool effects and an interesting plot line of why you're going to A to B. But whereas a character driven thing, you need good acting, good writing. You need to be able to dig into those characters a little more so you care about exactly what you're saying. So, is that kind of what you're feeling is lacking? Is the character development, or is there and they're just not pulling it off well?
yeah. The stories are a little bit slow, so it's not like the plot's not pulling me in, and the characters feel underdeveloped. So it's like, or they're
Mm,
copies of characters we've seen before. It's like, um,
generic.
yeah, and for some reason the guy who's playing Spock, just it bugs me on a deep level, and I don't see him as Spock. He could
Right.
be another Vulcan. That's fine, but I didn't care for the newer movies, the Kelvin timeline movies, but I did like the cast. Like I felt they did a really good job casting all those
Yep.
characters, and
Yep.
I was fine with Zachary Quinto as Spock and Chris Pine as Kirk. I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
they worked
Quinto's a
fine.
good
But
Spock. I felt like
yeah,
he really nailed that role.
but
And
he's too
even when he
old
was,
now for the Spock that they're doing now. So yeah,
yep, yep, yeah, even he held his own in the role of side by side with Leonard Nimoy, which
yeah,
is interesting. Like that's how strong he was in the role, is you could put both of them on screen together, and you
yeah,
didn't even
and
think about it.
yeah, he was. Yeah, so I'm not like it has to be Leonard Nimoy, because like yeah, Zachary Quinto, he worked just fine. So, but
Right.
this
Yep.
guy, he looks like, you ever watch that '70s show, Topher Grace?
Oh, he's a
Spock
Topher
looks like
Grace Spock.
Topher Grace. Yeah, it's not, but it looks like
No.
him. It's like all I keep thinking is that '70s show every time I see Spock, and it just like breaks my image of him. It's like,
And that's ultimately just bad casting, right? Like that's a
yeah,
casting director
and
faux pas.
but other people I talk to say they like it. It's fine. So I'm just kind of picky, you know.
Well, yeah, it depends on your level of nerd too. Like if you
Yeah,
are schooled i- into the whole timeline of a show and you're familiar with all the characters that have all played it across the board, then you're going to have some strong feelings and strong thoughts about who should be doing what.
yeah.
Uh, we talked about that there needs to be a like nerd consultant that goes around to a lot of these shows and basically red flags
Oh
things or
yeah,
says, no, 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 it can't be this. This breaks canon. No.
yeah, yeah. They you need like a panel of nerds, really, just
Right.
like reviewing every script and just like, if the whole panel is having problems with your script, there's probably something wrong with it.
Right. Because there's only a couple directors, that you can think of offhand where you can fully trust them with any nerd IP to get right. And it's like Josh Whedon, Dennis Villeneuve, uh, trying to think who else. Those are my top two that come to mind. Like, oh, they won't
Yeah.
fumble it. They get the lore. They're gonna do a good job. They're gonna do it justice.
Oh man, imagine if Josh Whedon did like the Star Trek movies or the new Star
Exactly.
Wars or something. My God,
Mm,
might have been pretty epic then.
right. Instead of people
uh,
actively trying to destroy the things we love. Kathleen
yeah,
Kennedy.
and you see like interviews with these people, and they're like, well, yeah, that's what you grew up with, but we're gonna redefine it, or and it's like we're
Mm,
gonna make it our own. But it's like, well, you're just now alienating all the fans. You might get some new ones, but I guess the old fans are getting older. Man, they
yeah.
might
Well,
not be around as much anymore, so they don't care
ex-
about them.
and I think that's what, as older dudes, we haven't got our head wrapped around with, that we're no longer the target market. And we're
Yeah,
like, no, we matter. And they're like, no, you don't. It's 14-year-old girls and boys that matter. That's our target
yeah.
market, not you. And you're like,
Oh yeah,
but I still need content. And they're like, sorry, just you're not our market. Because that's what
yeah,
Disney did with
and
Star Wars, right? Is they put it in
yeah.
that preteen, they're preteen movies, really, right? When
But the thing is, when we were growing up, we were the target audience, and they stuck very heady stuff at us that kind of made sense. There was pseudoscience, but everything had like rules, and we absorbed it and we loved it. And it's like, uh, and now I just think they're just creating forgettable content because it's like they the lasting power I don't think is there anymore. Um,
Well, they break records
yeah,
sales wise with all this stuff too.
yeah.
So it's like it's hard to say it's not successful when it is successful monetarily.
Yeah.
We have ask any Star Wars fan, did you like the last three Star Wars movies? The answer is no, but they made $1 billion on every single one of
Yeah.
them.
It's
So
because
it's
it's
like,
Star Wars.
yeah.
Yeah.
But how
And
long? I guess that gets exhausted at a point, right? You need to do, like, thank God for Favreau coming in,
yeah.
even though like he made it fun to watch again, even though there's little beefs in there about certain things here and there. Like I kind of feel like Mando's almost feels like the Kevin Sorbo Hercules kind of template on USA
Yeah.
Network. where he's not reinventing the wheel with how the show is, and it's a very simple show, but fun.
And that's what's great about it. Like, it's simple. It's somewhat episodic, which is fun too. It's got an overarching story, but every week they're kind of dealing with a different situation, which is neat.
Hmm.
I kind of miss that form factor. Uh, and it makes fun of itself, and it has fun. It's like a spaghetti western in space too. It's like it's got that kind of western feel to it to me. Um, which makes me miss also Firefly, but
Another Whedon, like that was his
yeah,
kind of big breakout, right?
I
As
don't ever
far as
remember hearing about him before that.
I mean, he was doing some other. He was definitely in industry and floating around like comics, but Firefly was such a good one. I'm surprised. I'm surprised
I
they
heard
haven't
there
tried
may
to.
be a reboot
I was just gonna say,
actually.
I'm surprised they haven't tried to reboot it or bring it
Yeah,
back. But that's one
I
where it
maybe I
has to
dreamt
be
that. I don't know.
Whedon. Yeah, it's no one else can could bring that show
Yeah,
back if it's not Whedon though, because all the fans are going to nitpick it apart if it's not Josh Whedon.
yeah,
They're going to say, "Oh, it's not like old Firefly because of X or whatever."
yeah.
But if it's Whedon, it's his creative decision, so we'll give him way more leeway than.
And I don't know how you would capture the magic of that show again too, because it's like you can't have the same cast. It's impossible to get them all together, I think.
Nate
Um,
Fillion. I mean, what he's in a cop drama now.
oh, is he
Yeah, he plays a what's the name of it? Like
Castle
the
Over?
no, it's called The New Guy, I think, and
The new guy.
he's a aging 40 or 50-year old man that becomes a rookie on LAPD.
Hmm.
So it's I don't know, it's not an amazing role. So I feel like he
He
could be
keeps
lured
working.
he could yeah,
Yeah.
he could be lured away from that. He was great in Did you play Destiny? The
Only a
video
little
the
bit.
video Okay, well he was great as in Destiny. He was one of the, fan beloved characters.
Oh,
D-
okay.
Dead now in the series. Spoiler alert.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I played Destiny 2 a little bit. Yeah. But I didn't
yeah.
get into this. I didn't even know there was a story.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It
Uh
just seemed so that game just like it's all over the place. It seems so big.
it is massive. Now finally it is cohesive. If you were playing all along every step is chaos.
Yeah.
And so many decisions that you disagreed with as somebody that was investing 1,000 hours of their time into this game. Uh, but now, I think when all said and done, I think the latest one it is like titled "The Beginning of the End" or something because they're reaching the end of the cycle for this game. And
Yeah.
when the whole thing can be looked at as a whole, it'll be one of the most epic games ever. But if you're in the trenches with that thing the whole time, a mess. Just an absolute mess. But it was really fun that was a great game to play with friends.
Yeah,
Really
that's
fun
why
to
I got into it because one of my friends was playing it. And he like we never play the same games, so I'm just like, all right, I'll try it out. And then we were playing at different times, and we never played together anyway. So I was like, yeah,
right, right. Uh and that was one of the cooler games where you had to one of the first multiplayer elements where you had to have strategic cooperation where not at the highest level of strategy, but you just had to strategize together at just a really low level. But surprisingly, that's novel for a game. Like, oh, we all need to
yeah.
work together toward a common strategic goal, and
That's
that
what I
made
like
for a lot of
about
fun.
Sea of Thieves.
Mm.
I don't know
Right,
if
and
you're
that's
familiar with that game, but
yeah, I've played a little bit, but
yeah,
yeah, what is so Sea of Thieves is a kind of multiplayer sandbox, and then you can quest within it, and then you need different amounts of people in your party to sail different sized boats.
yeah.
And then
So like the biggest boat is the galleon. You need 4 people to sail it well.
Mm.
And yeah, you all basically, somebody's controlling the rigging, someone's steering, then you got cannons to deal with, and for four players on a boat, it's actually a bit much to handle at times. But yeah, I haven't seen another game quite like that one. And the neat thing about it too is when you're gathering up loot, that's all sitting on your ship, and it's all vulnerable until you take the time to go into a port and turn all that stuff in. You have to like carry everything too. It's not like you just like cash it all in at once. And so you're vulnerable. And if someone comes along and decides they want to fight with you, because it's kind of an open world PvP, but there's a limited number of boats on the server. But someone can come by and battle with you and try to take all your stuff. And
Yeah, and creating that feeling of anxiety organically
yeah,
is a really cool thing, and that is a rare thing to happen in games where you
yeah.
get that
And these
feeling of
days,
oh.
the only thing I could compare it to was early days of Ultima Online.
Mm.
Um, because that was like MMOs were brand new. That was the first MMO as far as I know. And they didn't know what the heck they were doing. But it was like the Wild West frontier because there was no protection of your items. If you died, you got looted, and PvP was rampant. But from that came one of my favorite gaming moments ever, as uh, I was just kind of randomly uh, exploring, and I run across another player, and we decide to team up and like fight the AI and get some loot. And we see this naked guy run by, and he goes, "Player killers!" like screaming. And these two guys decked out in full like armor I'd never seen before. It was like glowing, and they were shooting spells. And they dropped the guy I was with, and I just ran for. And they're chasing me. I run through the woods and come up to a shoreline, and there's a boat with a plank down. And I go onto that boat and I pull the plank up and I sail off. And these guys are on shore and they're shooting stuff at me. And I just sail off. And I look in the hold of the ship and it's full of loot. It's their loot. So I stole the player killer's treasure hoard.
Amazing, and you got away
And
with it.
made off with it. Yeah. And so I contacted that guy I was with. I'm like, dude, don't worry about your stuff. Don't go back. We have everything you could ever imagine is on this boat. So
That's
we split it
amazing.
all up, and yeah. And you can't have an experience like that anymore. It's
No,
like it doesn't exist. Maybe in like Rust or something. I'm not sure.
Tarkov is similar-ish. You get that feeling of loss because when you die, you lose all the loot that's on you.
Yeah.
Which is it's like a hardcore first-person shooter. But for those that don't know about Ultima, yeah, if your character died, it was gone. It was dead forever, right?
Well, no, you
Uh,
became a ghost, and then you could go back to a shrine and you resurrect, but you lost all the items that were on you unless you had friends that could save it. You had to go back to your body,
right.
So, uh, and I think you lost some skills, but it wasn't like permadeath, but death
Mm,
hurt because you lost your good stuff that you were adventuring with,
yeah,
So
and I'm
you
pretty
always had
sure.
to have backup gear somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Ultima Online, right? They had a secondary market where the currency in Ultima became more valuable than like 16 real countries on the earth,
Oh my
where
gosh.
the Ultima Gold or whatever the currency was, and it was worth more than if you lived in Azerbaijan or whatever. Because you
That's
could
funny. I
actually
stopped
there's
playing it at that point, I think, but yeah.
yeah. Uh, yeah, and those are that's where we're in a desert of gaming now, right? There's just nothing. And a lot of those situations don't need to be pre planned. You just need to provide an environment for us to
Yep.
have our own experiences in. And unfortunately, I just feel like money is, like all things, money reigns supreme, and they're
Yeah.
not really thinking about the gamers or the game at this case.
And
But
that was Sea of Thieves for me for a while, but then the more content they added, they kind of in my opinion, like ruined the game for me. So it kind of lost its draw, and
Do you feel like
because
it?
early on there was no content, and so players were basically making up their content,
Mm,
and that's where a lot of those interesting experiences came from. Now there's almost too much content in the game, and it's become more boring somehow for me.
right, because you just make a to-do list, right? You're just like,
Yeah,
okay, I see, I need to get all these things, so I get X, and then all right,
yeah,
go do task A, and then go do task B, and then go do, and now you're not. That's
yeah,
your focus in the game, not. So it's funny that more content can actually dilute the core part of the game that was actually fun. When in
yeah.
development, they're obviously thinking the opposite, like, oh man, we got to get more content out to keep people playing this game.
Yeah, and it almost comes overwhelming. It's just like there's so much to do that it's just like, you know, I don't even know what to do.
Right.
And I think that was Destiny for me too. It's like there's too many options here. I don't know what the heck I'm to do, and sometimes just having no options. Like my favorite game right now is Project Zomboid, which is an open world survivor zombie game that's isometric view, like kind of like Ultima Online, style. Um, and it's multiplayer. I have my own server running that my friends get on, but we don't play with other people, just us. And there's no real goal. It's a huge map. There's zombies everywhere, and we just kind of like, okay, we're gonna clear this area. We're gonna set up a base, and just kind of work our way. It's set in Kentucky, so our goal is to get to Louisville and
Mm.
uh, and and clear out Louisville, which is huge in the map. So, but it's a really deep game. There's like all these skill progressions. Like you can find cars and take every part of the car off and fix it and put it back together. It's like really in depth.
Oh, really?
Um,
I wasn't aware
yeah,
that it was that deep.
yeah,
Uh, and I think what we're really describing here is the most fun you can have with the game is the more you're allowed to role play. And hence
yeah,
RPGs being a genre. Like you want to go in and feel like you want to leave your regular life behind and adopt this alternate personality within the and
yeah.
believe it for yourself. At least, believe it for while you're playing. I mean, if not afterwards, that's why cosplay is the thing, people like to keep it going. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's why Skyrim was so successful and people still play Skyrim now is because it's one of the better role playing games as far as having enough story to make you feel like I'm going to be the Vampire King or
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
going to be the Nord Blacksmith.
I was just
Uh,
thinking about replaying Skyrim again.
with all the mods now, Russ has been playing it, and with all the new PC mods and everything, it looks pretty. I mean, it holds up still. It's not as as blingy as a state of the art newest game, but it looks pretty good. And
I
the
think
amount of
I have it
mods,
on PS3 or something still. I don't know.
no, you got to do it on PC so you can get all the mods in. Because there's so many
Yeah,
graphical mods and everything, and expansions to like. You can put on a survival mod where when you get cold, it affects your stamina and your health, and so you got to eat at regular intervals or stand next to a fire.
yeah.
Um, and there's a
I
lot of
still
good.
like, a lot of times I like playing the original version still. Like I played Red
Mhm,
Dead Redemption, the original one, a few years back, right before Red Dead 2 came out, so it's probably more like 3 or 4 years now.
mm,
But like cuz I have back there somewhere is a PS3, Xbox 360 and PS4. I
yeah.
wasn't a console gamer for a long time. I didn't get going back earlier. Like I went from Pong
Mm.
to Atari 2600, and that was the last console I had until later in the PlayStation 2 era. Because I
Oh,
went
really?
PC. Well, yeah, Commodore 64. Well, first was the Texas Instruments TI
Mhm.
99, then Commodore 64, then Amiga, and then the PC. And but uh, but yeah, so I didn't get into console gaming until much later. But I do like Yeah, I like those original versions of games sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and you had mentioned before, so the Commodore, I had a Commodore too as a kid, and just, that was it. Like, because there was the Nintendo existed at that time, but it was just the early days of it. I can remember having the Commodore and playing like I want to say Mario, Russian Attack, and Mike Tyson's Chow. I was playing on Nintendo, and then on the Commodore, it was like all these weird unknown games. So you could get something on a floppy disk from a friend and put it
yeah,
in, and you had no idea what you were going to boot up or what the game was
yeah,
going to be like.
and that's
Yeah.
why I attribute my career to the Commodore 64 because right now I do visual effects for sometimes films and TV stuff, but uh, I did a lot of like music videos and commercials. Now I'm pretty much just like making NFTs for a company, so but that's
Oh
another
yeah.
story. But but the Commodore 64, when I got that, like yeah, there was all these like hacked games floating around because I didn't have any money. My dad made me pay for part of the Commodore 64, just as like that was his way of teaching you responsibility. And he he would have bought it for me probably anyway because he knew how important computers were. And but so I had to get a job at like 13 or 14 and help pay off like half of the Commodore 64. And but there was so I didn't have money to spend on games, and so you get together with your friends and copy these things, and they all had like copy protection schemes that you had to like crack and stuff, and like sometimes you'd have to like go in and create an error on the disk, like with some kind of a sector editor, and like because the game for copy protection would look for a specific error on the disk, and that was how they detected if the game was valid or not. And so you'd have to create that, and so that got me into programming a little bit, and which kind of led me into the visual effects industry because I at a certain point I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career, and my brother had started a company doing computer graphics, and I was doing it as a hobby at that time with my Amiga, and my mom was just like, "Give your brother a job," so he did,
Yeah.
and and I was good at it, so uh,
Yeah, I remember going to the first kid's house that had all like a whole list of cracked games that he could burn onto a floppy for you. And, my mind was blown when I saw the list. Like, oh my god, you have like 200 games on there.
yeah,
Uh, we became best friends after that.
I might. I don't have those. I have my Amiga discs somewhere. I actually have an Amiga up on my shelf up there.
And you think it
Uh,
still work?
It does, but I used it a couple years ago, and I was actually going to do some streaming, like retro game streaming on it.
Mm.
But I found out that the power supplies can go bad and ruin the machine, and I need to
Oh.
replace the power supply. So they like even if it works, don't they say don't run it because it can toast your machine. Um, so I got afraid and I turned it off, and I need to order a new power supply for it so I don't toast it.
That's definitely worth doing. I bet you can get some serious viewers if you're showing that old retro stuff.
Yeah, and there's people that do that too, but
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be fun. But back on the Commodore 64, that's where I got introduced to Ultima. I played Ultima 3 was the first one I played, and just recently I played Ultima 1 and 2 because I never played those before, and I started Ultima 3. Um, but man, Ultima 1 and 2 are bad games. Like I don't even know if I would have liked them when they first came out.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost
uh,
want to remember trying to play and being like, "Nah, we're not doing this."
yeah, Ultima 3 was great. I was having fun with that one. And then after that, Ultima 4 was like the pivotal game I think in the series for me. Like that's where it's like it really found its roots, and and kind of built on the lore, and then from there, they did really well after that.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't as into RPGs as a kid. That became I guess later in life a thing where I guess I understood what was going on enough to like want to get into the role playing part of it a little bit as you play the
Yeah.
game. When I was younger, it was just all about you know really tough platformers, action games, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I remember playing Ninja Gaiden when that came out, and it was so difficult. And I remember just grinding as a kid to get to that final boss, and then the final boss just wipe out because there was only you only got 3 lives, and then if you did well, like 1 or 2 bonus lives. So if you got to the
Mm.
final boss, you'd get 5 tries, and it was so difficult. It would just wipe you out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it was so crushing because you had to play
Oh yeah.
hours to get there.
Oh yeah.
Um, and a
Yeah, no
lot of
save
games were like
games.
that.
Like you just had to. Yeah, I remember like Prince of Persia stuff like
Mm.
that was I think kind of like that too. Oh no,
Yeah.
that had save points. I think.
No, yeah, Prince of Persia, that was Ubi's first kind of big splash, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that was a great game. That was
Yeah.
it kind of redefined what because it was a half puzzler and then you could climb
Yep.
around on everything. You could climb around on everything vertically, which that was kind of in 3D. So that was kind of no one else was really doing that. We just
Yeah,
had
that
a
was the first platformer I really got into. I don't know if
mhm.
it was. I'm sure there was other stuff before that, but like it wasn't really on my radar.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
last podcast we just trashed Doobie for like 2 hours straight of like what they've become. Because it well, it was because it's so disappointing. It used to be like the top of gaming, where they
Yeah.
every big release they would have would be the best game you've ever played with like the coolest new ideas, the coolest tech, and now it's just fallen into just
It seemed like that started happening quite a while
phoning it
ago,
in.
like in the '90s. Because I remember like, oh, it's a Ubi title, like,
It really
like,
was the microtransaction era. Once that started, that
mm.
wiped everything out. Because you can
Didn't
go
they do
back and
Tomb Raider too?
no, Tomb
No, that
Raiders,
was someone
Tomb
else.
Raiders, yeah. I don't know who was
Yeah, I
had
can't
ownership
remember.
of Tomb Raider before Crystal Dynamics. Crystal Dynamics is a really great team though. That's up in yeah. I think they're Redwood City, but they have a great tech team and they make a really smooth game. If you played any of the new Tomb Raiders, they're really
I
solid, well-made games.
I haven't. I got a few of them for free because I grab all the free games on Epic Games and or if there's like a really good sale on Steam or something, I'll pick something up.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think I have a few of the Tomb Raider games, the more recent ones for me within like the last 5-10 years, I guess.
Oh yeah, so if you haven't played any of them, the only problem with them is if you played through, like say the last 4 of them, they're all kind of the same game and it got redundant,
Mm,
which was kind of a shame because they were again really well made, some of the best put together, solid mechanics uh, of stealth and action for that kind of Splinter Celly
so
sneak
if I
around.
were to, what would be the one you would recommend? Like if you could play one Tomb Raider game throughout the last 10 years, which one would be it?
The last 3, I would start from anywhere in the last 3 are going to be a really
Okay.
fun playthrough. Um,
Yeah.
I would go. I would look at whatever the latest is 2 before that and try that one, and then all. That's what I mean. All 3 of those are basically the same game, and they're just a continuation of more or less the
Hmm.
same story.
Yeah.
But there's not really too much different between them. There's like some different crafting things and like slightly different quests types between the 3 of them, but overall they're basically the exact same game.
Yeah.
Um, which is where we land with everything currently. It's like, oh, this all these should be free to play with just their yearly patch update for $12 or something. Um,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's a desert. I think, and again, that's where we came back to like, I guess we're not the target market is the 12-year-old that has never played a game before, and so whatever they pick up and play is gonna be the coolest thing they've ever played. But if you've been gaming for the last decade, you're gonna be so jaded when you jump in like,
Yeah.
More run to from A to B and press X on the chest quests. No, thank you. Uh,
Yeah, at least I think the QuickTime events have gone away.
mm,
From what I've seen.
yeah,
Oh no, I did play the Spider-Man game that everybody was raving about a few years back.
right.
Finally got around to playing that, and was like, it does have some of that in it, and I didn't care for that game as much as people hyped it up for. So
It was pretty
not the target
redundant.
audience.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was pretty redundant. There are some, speaking of QuickTime events, there are some pretty cool story-driven games that are all QuickTime event driven. But
Yeah.
they're story-driven and they're horror. Um,
Yeah. So that's
the
one's I forget the name of it, but I played one of those with my wife.
Until
Um
Dawn
uh yeah, I'm
with
not familiar with that one, but yeah, there was one I played with my wife and she liked to watch it because it was like watching a story or a movie.
yep.
I didn't like it cuz I'm just sitting there watching for the little damn the button to pop up, which button to hit, and it's
Yeah,
like I'm not enjoying this. I'm just hitting buttons.
yeah.
Like
Detroit Become Human is probably the best of them.
okay.
Really cool story. Really cool French director on the whole thing. So he is very, he's looking at things as they should be considered. And it's just really well done. A great acting. Uh, what is the word? Cast? That's not the right word. Big cast of actors, I
Just
guess. They're
cast, yeah.
and it's a really interesting story too because it deals with kind of singularity events and the premise is basically androids are becoming sentient and you play three different androids at in the moments where they become sentient
Hmm.
in three different parallel storylines that then all converge at the end into one big uh but why it's really cool is how much it branches. So you can play through a section of it, and you have 5 or 6 choices that you can make through a little series of events. And then all of those branch. So you'll play through making the decisions that you want to make. And then at the end of the level, it shows you the choice tree. And it's this massive choice tree. And you're like, oh my God, so many other things could have happened. And it was a really satisfying playthrough. Like I
Hmm.
went through and replayed a bunch of times just to see what the other choices would have been. Um,
Yeah.
but generally, yeah, those aren't games that I seek out. But when I played that one, I was like, okay, this is the top
Yeah, I
of
heard good
what
things
these
about
type
that
of
one.
things
Yeah.
are.
There was a game based off of I think it was Westwood Studios, based off Blade Runner, and it was supposedly like it could play out a lot of different ways. And this was back in the '90s, I think it came out. And then I think they released it, like kind of remastered it, recently. But I played through that 3 times, and it was like the same thing every time. I'm like, because it wasn't a really long game, like if but maybe I just kind of made the same choices, but I was like, I tried to change it up, and it just, yeah. So I don't think I mean, it was a neat game, but I don't think it lived up to its promise of that, branching story like it was
Yeah,
supposed to have.
and it's funny how you are minded a certain way in it when confronted with like the. A lot of times you have to force yourself to pick the evil choice, like
Oh
and
yeah,
in your head you're like, I would never do this. But I want to see what the outcome is. You're like almost apologizing to yourself as you make the choice.
yeah. I
Uh,
tried to do that with Oblivion recently, like within the last year. I was like, I'm gonna play a bad guy, and it's like suddenly I'm like helping everybody. I'm like, dang it, I
yeah,
can't, I can't be a bad guy.
yeah. It's like in Fallout, if you ran into you run into the strange meat, and in your head you're immediately like, "That's human meat."
That's
and
peculiar.
yeah,
Hmm.
even and I'm gonna say, I said this before, I'll say it again. If you eat the human meat even in the digital world, you're a weirdo. Like cannibalism is not okay even in the digital world. It's weird.
That seems like I did do that in a game. I can't remember what it was. Oh, so I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons fan, and probably
Mm.
been into it since I've been about 11 or so. And we played an evil campaign, and my character is basically kind of a voodoo witch doctor cannibal, and we're pirates too, so we're like on a pirate ship. I'm the doctor and cook on the ship. And sometimes people wonder what's in that stew.
Right. Is that an eyeball? And you just scoop it away real quick? No. Um,
uh,
so you played Dungeons and Dragons then back. You had a bunch of pewter figurines, right?
yeah,
Did
yeah.
you
I
paint?
still
Did you
have some
paint
of the
them?
ones.
Hand paint them yourself?
Yeah, I didn't have a big group that we would play with that was all into that stuff. And just recently, I found out a guy I went to high school with is publishing a whole campaign setting, like all these books and stuff.
Mm.
And here we went to the same high school. We didn't really talk much, and he's like huge into D&D, and I'm like, why didn't I know this? We would have been best friends. Like,
Yeah.
but back then it was so taboo. You didn't talk about D&D to anybody unless you knew they were uh they did it too, because it's like, you get your ass kicked.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's real, right? Like we grew up in generations where being an outcast was a real thing. If somebody
Yeah,
felt like you were involved in anything fringe, you could be, like harsh bullied, where,
yeah.
you're not allowed to eat around other people in school and things like that.
I
Uh,
mean, our only saving grace is we didn't have social media, because you know, because
oh my
that's where the
God.
new bullying happened. It's like,
Yep.
but like, yeah, if someone got like a video of you playing D&D and or talking about it, and they posted it like on Facebook, then you're destroyed. You know,
Right. Yeah,
but at
imagine
least,
social media in the 90s, in the
yeah,
80s and 90s.
yeah.
It would
I
have been,
mean,
yeah, wild.
yeah,
Everyone
and
would
it's
be,
like, kids still have it rough now. It's for different reasons, but at least the stuff that was taboo back then isn't as much anymore. It's like now it's like, oh, you play D&D, cool, you know.
right. Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah, now it's gotta be such a strange thing as far as the pressure is such a weird, different kind of bullying, different kind of ostrich. Like, oh, you don't have any followers. Like, you don't have any followers on Instagram. Like, what a weird thing to try and get your head wrapped around as you're like coming of age.
yeah,
Uh,
oh, that's our pirate ship from our campaign, our
okay.
pirate. Yeah,
So do you guys still
so
get together and play?
we used to. So this was
Okay.
on. Oh my gosh, there's cobwebs on this thing.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
but
Very cool.
I
You
designed that
you made
and
this?
made this myself. Right underneath there is that's a laser cutter. This white
Uh-huh.
thing in the background. So this was all cut out from wood, 1/4 inch plywood on my laser cutter,
Very cool.
and all kind of just fits together. You can see the cobwebs. It's been sitting there a while,
No,
but
it's keeping in your lore, If
yeah.
cannibal witch doctor on it,
Um,
there should be some giant
and yeah,
spiders.
it all basically it's just all fits together with like slots and stuff, and
So
yeah.
how did you plan it out? Did you actually draw plans for that thing?
Um, I, I didn't, because like we had a game. So this was with my friend Mike as well. Our group doesn't play physically together anymore, but uh, before COVID, uh, once every year we were meeting up like somewhere like Las Vegas or Palm Springs. People would fly in because we live all over the country now, and we'd do a D&D weekend. And
Mm.
so a week before we were gonna play, I decided like I'm gonna make these things, and I built two ships. One of them's disassembled, I think. But um, so I didn't really plan it out other than like I do a quick sketch, and then basically just in Illustrator, I designed the deck plans and laid it out, and basically just kind of designed it as I was building it. And it just happened to work out. And and then That one took me almost the full week, and then the second ship I did in 8 hours the night before. I basically designed it and cut it out and brought all the pieces and then glued it and stained it and everything while we were there.
So how did you know? I guess in my head, I'm like, how did you know it would actually fit? Like you, all the pieces and everything. Have you?
Well, I had the decks next to each other in the document,
Uh-huh.
and so I could see where all the tabs lined up, um, and I really don't know because it just kind of came together. I'm like, I have a good head for 3D and stuff like that, I guess, and it just kind of worked. And like, if I had to do it over again, I don't think I could do it as good. I don't know, like, not the way I did it, at least.
Yeah, it's
Um,
funny how stuff's
yeah.
like that. That's very cool
Um,
though.
since then, I built some other things that I do now in a CAD program called Fusion 360. It's basically free to use if you don't make money with it.
Mm.
So if you're a hobbyist, it's great. So it's like a full CAD program. So if I were going to do that again, I'd do that in CAD, because doing it in Illustrator like that, yeah, it worked. I got it done quickly because I didn't know the CAD at the time. It would have taken me twice as long to do it in CAD, because I didn't know the program that well. Um, but if I want to make any changes, or if I use a different type of wood, I'm I'm kind of screwed, because like all the tabs are specifically designed for that thickness of wood. Um, and if you change the thickness of the wood, all the tabs have to change. And even if you
Mm.
change the type of wood, laser cutters, everything has like what they call kerf. Like even a saw blade, that's like the thickness of your saw blade. That's the amount of material that gets removed. Well, a laser cutter, it's a small kerf, but it has it. You have to compensate for that when you're designing things so that they fit together nice and neat like a puzzle. And if you don't have the right kerf, uh, things don't fit snugly. And yeah, so if I changed woods, or if I get a different batch, that kerf might change and things will be loose and or too tight or something. And so that all has to be designed into the drawing. And because I did it in Illustrator, if that I can't change that now. It's like it's just kind of hard coded in. But with these CAD programs, you can put little, they call them parametric CAD, which means you have parameters. And you can say like, oh, this is the thickness of my kerf, this is my wood, and the whole design could change based off of that.
Yeah,
So
and that's why I was wondering initially is if you catted it out, but that you did it in Illustrator's wild
yeah,
because
it was insane. But I knew like I know I can do this in the time I have. I know I can do it, but it's basically a one-off because like because people were saying I should like sell the designs or stuff like that for that, and I was like,
mm,
I could, but yeah, it's there's things I want to change on it too, but yeah, it worked out great, and um, yeah, I like I like crafting stuff. Um, I'm kind of a mix between like I'm like super nerdy in like digital things, but then I also like to build things with my hands too.
yeah, that
And
said, do you have a 3D printer?
I'm surprisingly I don't. Like I have that laser cutter and I have a CNC machine, but I
Mm,
don't have a 3D printer. Um, and I've always wanted one. I just never got around to it.
they're
I
really
spent all my
affordable
money on
these
those
days.
things.
Yeah,
Oh
they're
yeah, I
much more
spent
affordable.
that
Yeah, how
thing. It's
much?
the Glowforge. I think I paid. It was about 3,000 for that, and my CNC machine was about 3 or 4,000 as well.
Yeah, I was just
And
wondering that.
yeah, and yeah, 3D printers are nothing. Like you can buy a good 3D printer for a couple $100 these days.
Yep. Yeah,
uh,
I've been meaning to pick one up because uh, there's all kinds of stuff that would be fun to print. Um, I think all you need is really an OBJ, right?
yeah, it has to be built in a way like it has to be solid, like what they call kind of watertight models, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, it's basically just a geometry file. It has to be pretty high res because all your detail comes from the polygons, tricks like bump mapping or normal mapping don't work when you 3D print something. So it has to
Yeah.
be all hard geometry.
So what else do you make with the laser cutter and CNC machine besides D&D boats?
Uh, Not as much as I should be, but I made a monitor stand for
Okay.
my that holds my iPad because I use a touch portal to
Mm.
control. I don't know if you're familiar with touch portal. So I have a spare iPad that mounts right in front of my monitor. So I designed this cool little monitor stand, and probably have pictures, but um, and with the CNC machine, I started to build some pirate ships with the CNC machine. Um, I took, Mega Bloks had these. It's kind of like a Lego compatible system. Mega Bloks. They had the Pirates of the Caribbean. Caribbean. Did I say
Hmm.
Caribbean? Whatever.
I think either's okay, right?
When you get older, you start losing words and
Carabiners,
things.
Pirates of the Carabiner.
Pirates of the Carabiner. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
mountain climbers.
Johnny
Uh,
Deep.
um, well, they had these Mega Bloks ships based off the Pirates of the Caribbean, and I wanted to modify them, so I was CNC cutting wood that actually snapped in where the Legos would snap to like extend the hull, and I never finished that project, but I made a few like signs with the CNC machine. My wife has an antique booth, and so I made some stuff to sell in their booth. Um, and the most useful thing I built with the laser cutter for my wife, at least, it's a stupid little. We have a drawer, a sliding drawer that pulls out for our trash in the kitchen, and it kind of has an auto closer on it, so it'll close up. But we found out if it's closed, the trash gets really stinky.
Hmm.
Because it's like it just kind of gets in there and rots, But if you leave it cracked open a little bit, it airs out and it kind of dries stuff out before it gets too stinky. And so I built this little clip that sits on the top of the drawer that keeps it from from closing. She's like, "That's my favorite thing you've ever built." And it's like this stupid little clip. It's like I built.
Yeah,
You know how hard it was to build that dang pirate ship, and he's like, "You're impressed by this stupid little clip that
yeah.
took me 10 minutes."
The little spacer for the win.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't utilize it as much as I should. Uh,
Yeah.
so many things. I'm doing stuff for on the side. I'm doing some commission work for Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Actually, building um building maps in this program called Tailspire,
Mm.
which allows you to do like it's a virtual tabletop that is like tile based, and I came up with a way using my expensive VFX software Houdini. I can basically build maps in that and import them into that software, and so I can do huge landscapes, which would take someone probably you know a couple weeks of work to build something. I can do it in minutes. You know.
Yeah.
Uh, so I got a commission right now that I'm working on a map for that, and so yeah, it's just like there's so many things to do. I have all the hobbies. That's my problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's only so much time in the day, but
Yeah,
yeah, I like to. uh, I have a hard time keeping just focused on just building one skill set up too. I'm so curious about so many different things that when something comes up, I'm like, "Ooh, this," and then it just adds to
yeah,
the 10 other things I'm interested in as well.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, but Houdini's really cool. Like you're saying, you're doing all those things procedurally, then, right? Where you
yeah,
kind of set up a template and then you can just basically iterate on that infinitely, basically, right?
yep.
Yeah, yeah, all that stuff's wildly
Yeah, I built
powerful.
a whole tool set on for Houdini to Tailspire that I put on the GitHub, so
Mm,
anybody can use it. Um, it's but it's not easy. You have to know Houdini, and that's where like people will be like, "Oh, cool, I want to do stuff like that," and then they're like, "Oh, Houdini's kind of deep." Like, yeah,
Really
it's
deep. Yeah,
yeah,
I haven't got into it yet, but I have friends that have showed
yeah,
me demos, and every demo I've
yeah,
seen of it is just blows my mind. Where it's like, oh, this is real. But this is what 3D was supposed to be.
yeah,
Not stuck in the, the Autodesk swamp. Because the problem with Autodesk stuff is, like we were talking about before, CAD. I think CAD accounts for 90% of their profits per year because it's used
yeah,
worldwide as the standard for engineering. And, big companies pay them a lot of money to use CAD throughout their whole production pipeline. And the VFX oriented software is maybe 3% of their total profits per year. So they allocate about the same amount of resources as profit to making sure that those programs stay up to speed, and that's about what you get, is about 3% of time put toward making those things better. So
yeah,
when I saw Houdini, I was like, oh, this is a company that cares about making awesome stuff,
yeah,
making
and
the
they still care too. Like they're one of the few companies that like you can actually talk to the programmer, like the main programmer.
oh,
Like,
really?
yeah, I mean, I've been with them forever, like
Mm.
before Houdini existed, but uh they're still approachable, like and sometimes you'll have a question, and the main programmer, like he answers your question, and um they still have that kind of small company feel. Like, imagine like contacting the programmer of Maya, or one of the programmers. Like, you're not going to talk to any of those guys.
They're long gone on a beach somewhere. They're living in Southeast
Here,
Asia somewhere.
here.
Oh, this is the little clip.
That's the little clip. Yeah.
Nice.
um, yeah. So it just fits on the top of the drawer for the garbage, and yeah. Here's some of our. This is our weekend getaway with the pirate ships that I built.
Well, if you were gonna
Uh,
patent that clip, you just blew it.
no, no. um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
this is
Show some
our
more of these.
here's
Show a
our
bunch
group.
of these. Okay, nice.
um, yeah, they flat pack down really nice and easy, and uh, got us a lot of fun out of these things, even for that one weekend. And I even built like individual little planks for the stairs and stuff, and if you look really close, you can see like little wood grain detail I added on the top of the railings. So I
Mm.
went all out.
Oh man, when the D&D
um,
guys see this, they're gonna get so jelly.
yeah. Oh yeah, I think I posted these on like Reddit, or oh no, it was an old Google. Geez, I took a lot of pictures of those things.
Mm.
Um, it
Yo,
was like a Google Groups or something.
what are
Oh,
those?
these are what we were using for hero points, and we use Pathfinder, and so this was basically etching out a uh, a bunch of these tokens for us to use. Oh, and here's some of the early stages. This is when I was designing the second boat, because I wanted the second boat to be a certain size compared to this one. So
Hmm.
I kind of sketched it out, and I kind of based it off of this boat essentially. The second
What's
one.
that boat from?
Uh, looks like it was a design for Black Sails, which is a
Ah,
great show. I love that show.
yeah.
Um, and like here I'm like actually printing out the whoop, I don't know if you can hear that.
No.
Um, okay, good. It was loud. There it is, actually etching out the door panels and stuff.
Thing is so cool.
Yeah, it's so fun. Now that I'm seeing this, like I want to make something else with it.
You got to. You're so
Yeah,
spoiled with this thing.
yeah, and I know it's just sitting there collecting dust.
No.
Um, yeah, this was my original test piece right here. I was like, okay, if I can build this, then I can build the rest of the ship. And
Hmm.
then um, here was other plans I had made to like make this whole room. Never got around to finishing that. Uh, But yeah, so lots of
Yeah,
This was
very
it was
cool.
going to be a barn. So this is a picture uh off Google, and then me kind of recreating a piece of that barn
Hmm.
on the laser cutter. Yeah. Here's a picture frame I made for so we had a Secret Santa at work, and
Yeah.
the person's name I drew was a photographer, so I designed a picture frame that she could basically put together and quickly change out and stick photos in. And it gets pieced together by leather strips. And this is where I'm talking about those puzzle cuts, where like you have to make sure that um, the kerf is set just right, so those things snap together like a puzzle,
Hmm.
basically. And um, yeah, so her secret Santa gift was this thing that she could
So you
hang up and
basically just
display her photos.
you just flexed on everyone at work, so they were like trading
Yeah,
their
it's like
Walmart
what?
scarves with each other, and you're like, I made you a handmade picture frame.
Yeah,
Everyone is also like,
uh,
God, Jeff.
yeah, a little bit of a flex,
You know, just made it
but
with my laser cutter, no biggie.
how do I switch back to my camera now? I lost the button. Um, Full cam. There it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Uh yeah, I feel like you, if anybody, need to have that 3D too, especially with all the Houdini knowledge at your fingertips. There's probably some awesome stuff that you can get printing.
Oh yeah, and then before that, here I'll share this one too. Um, this this is what I used to do. Oh, there's a nice little animated GIF of it.
Mm,
So I built this out of styrofoam.
okay.
Um, and so right here you can kind of see like some of the construction of it. Started off with a clay model for reference, so I built that out of clay. It's about maybe 8 inches long, and
Mm-hmm.
then like drew up the full size plans based off of an existing map for a campaign we were doing, and then basically stuck those plans on some sheets of styrofoam and using a wire cutter carved away at sections of it until it looked kind of like ice.
Mm-hmm.
and and then paint it up, and and then it looks like that at our game.
Oh, and these were just for
Eh,
D&D.
yeah, this is a D&D game I did.
Okay.
I built this for a game that I was running, and this is how I did it so they could reveal as we went. I just put this like cloth over it. This
Oh,
wasn't the actual
cool.
game, but this was just me taking some pictures afterward, so that they could kind of have a fog of war type of thing,
Yeah.
so they couldn't see the whole thing.
So are you the
Uh,
dungeon master as well?
yeah, I both play and DM. Right now I'm a player, but I've this same campaign. We've been running this campaign for 10 years.
Very
We're
cool.
finishing up in the next session. Well, not the next session, but the next time I DM, which will probably be over like for a 6 months period, we should finish up the campaign.
Mm.
But
And then
yeah,
how often do you guys play?
we try to get together once a week. Tuesday nights are our game night. We play from 8 to 12 Pacific. But some of us are on the East Coast now, so they're starting at like 11 to 3 a.m.
Yep.
So the poor saps. They want
Yeah.
us to start earlier, but we have guys that like, well,
I
one of
have
the
a
guys in
job.
LA, yeah, he has a job, he has a kid, he has got to put the kid to sleep, and then he's got a game, It's like,
Yep.
uh, so,
Yeah, time
but,
zone problems, those are always going to get
yeah.
you. But if you're
But yeah,
hardcore,
D&D has had a huge impact in my life, and also impact in what media I consume,
mm,
because I think when I was about 12 or 13, Excalibur came out, the
the
movie.
Disney.
No, the is it John Borman, like the really blood and guts
Oh,
one?
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
awesome.
and that defined, like, this is how I want, even though that wasn't really fantasy. I guess it is kind of. That kind of defined the type of fantasy that I wanted in media,
Mm,
and nothing else compared to it until Game of Thrones. Like,
right.
like in my mind, that was like the first thing that was like, yes, they've nailed it. This is fantasy. It's serious. It's hardcore. It's gritty. And um, everything
Well,
else before that, it's been just kind of fanciful, and they treat fantasy like it's, I don't know, whimsical, I guess.
well, RR George RR is a huge D&D guy. He was actually
Yeah.
brought in to help revitalize D&D at a point where the storytelling and the lore of it had kind of stagnated a bit. And him, oh, I'm going to butcher some of this. What I
Oh, you cut out.
remember is, oh, did am I cutting out? My back?
Just a second. Yeah. Yep. You're
Okay.
back.
So what I was saying is, th- uh, this is what I best I can remember of it, and so I'm going to paraphrase and probably get this wrong. As I remember it, he came together with kind of a loose group of guys as a think tank, and these other novelists that kind of that type, and they came together and basically white papered what the future of D&D should look like, and set all these ground rules and templates for the rest of the lore to exist within. And it was
Oh, I
at
didn't
that,
know that.
yeah, and it was at that point that D&D kind of, I guess, found its real voice, you could say. And so what's interesting about that too is he came in and did the same thing for Elden Ring, the new video game, whereas the Dark Souls, Elden Ring, they say it's not a Dark Souls, it's a Dark Souls. It's Dark
Yeah.
Souls 4 is
That's
what
what
it
everybody
is.
compares it to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Dark Souls 4. But the lore in the Dark Souls was way disjointed and weird, and it was kind of meant to be because the games are these afterlife games where you're this dark spirit that's, encountering all these strange things, and you're trapped in a never-ending loop of death, essentially. But all of it was kind of nonsensical and had no linear feel to it. There was just these elements that you kind of slowly learned about, and then you'd have to go research outside of the game to kind of put it all. But RR came and set the template for Elden Ring, and the lore of Elden Ring is awesome now because he
Hmm.
brought in exactly that element you were talking about. He kind of set a lot of those things in place where he didn't write the whole game, but he set that groundwork. Like, this is what it
Yeah.
needs to be. This is the direction that the lore should flow, and just huge improvements to the story overall. Like, it still has a bunch of weird stuff where you run into characters that are kind of just strange and disjointed from the rest of the story, but it's kind of meant to be that way. You're meant to have those
Yeah.
kind of mysterious encounters, like, what's up with that guy wearing the gold mask? uh, and you'll never kind of figure it out fully. Uh, but that's a game worth playing too. That you probably, I don't know how much you dig action games. It's
Yeah.
difficult.
I'm not into the Dark Souls types of games, so like,
Mm,
a friend of mine was playing it. I was just like, yeah, I don't know if I'd be into this, because it just, I don't like games where you have to basically do something over and over and over to get it just right,
die and die and
and
die. Yeah.
yeah, and I would get frustrated with that. And just like, I love the feeling of uh figuring something out the first time and making yourself feel clever, or like maybe it takes you a couple tries.
Mm,
um there was a game, a platformer on the Amiga called Another World, something like that. And
mm,
it was a vector based platformer, and it was basically, you're like this scientist who is playing around with a particle accelerator, and lightning strikes, and this is like the opening cutscene, and it zaps you to another world, and you don't know what the heck you're doing. You just like, you you, I think you land in some water. You have to swim out, and all of a sudden there's like this dog like creature coming after you, and you just have to run. And it's a platformer basically, but it had no explanation. Like, it would introduce new game mechanics. Like, suddenly you find like this gun, and it was like a couple different
I
firing
remember
modes.
this game, I
Very
think.
experimental. But during the final sequence, I had two friends sitting behind me, and this is like must have been mid '80s. Um, and I was playing this game, and somehow I was just in the groove, and there was all these like levels I'd never seen before. Um, I was just like, you build this wall with a laser, as turn around, shoot some other guys, and then they would break through the walls in front of you, and I just got in sync, and I played through most of the last part of that game just on the seat of my pants, and my friends are going crazy behind me and like cheering me on, you know, and and I died right at like very very end, and I had to replay some of it, but like I couldn't believe, like I felt just in God mode, you know,
Yeah,
and and then when I went to replay some of that, I messed it up. Like, I just got the
yeah.
perfect. I was in the groove, you know,
Hmm.
and I miss games that make you feel that way, you know.
We would actually do some funny stuff with Dark Souls because we have a friend Joshy he's been on the podcast a couple times, and me and my brother we know the game really really well. So we actually made a couple characters that looked like Sherpas with with like just like a crude spear and a loincloth, and we would take and basically Sherpa him through the whole game, and let him know at parts. Okay, this is what's about coming here, so this is what you're going to need. Don't engage the boss. You just survive and keep rolling around and take all, and basically just give like a free walkthrough through the game. And then we did it with some other friends, with one of our buddies who's a big drinker. We he ended up being in this like lordly knightly armor, and it totally was like the drunken lord that couldn't do anything, and the shirt doing all the heavy lifting and just dragging him through the game basically.
Nice.
So that was really fun to do. We haven't done it with the Elden Ring yet because it's massive. It's another one of those games where it's a huge game. Well, it is a game where if you wanted to streamline it, you could just play through and go from this to this and kind of get through it in probably 30-40 hours. But if you're
Wonder
doing
what how long is it taking the speedrunners to do it?
probably 10 minutes, they can they get it down so and figure out jump off the map here. You end up at the end. Get 6 minutes
Yeah,
fifty
that's
nine
one thing
seconds.
I'm not interested in at all, is ever speedrunning anything. It's like,
No, why? Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
do that same thing, like just like I said, like doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like,
yeah. Yeah, whenever there's an exploit in anything, I always avoid. What are we doing here? I'm doing this to have fun, not to, you know. Why do I want the God mode? Because the fun of it is building it up incrementally over time. Like that's where the dopamine is. Like
yeah,
you just robbed yourself of your own dopamine by putting in God mode. Uh, but yeah, like I imagine D&D is getting surge bump just Stranger Things. Did you watch the latest season
I
of that?
haven't watched the latest season. I actually worked on a scene, something in that, but I haven't watched it yet. The last season, well, I did not like. I did finish it, but the season before this one. So I've been slow to get into this one. Just so,
I enjoyed
but
it. I felt like
yeah,
they're
I know
walking that
it.
cliche line, and they're doing it well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Hopefully it got back to its roots a little bit, because like that was a show that my wife saw the thumbnail for it when the first season came out. The first season had dropped. We had heard nothing about it, and she saw the thumbnail and she's like, "Oh, this looks interesting." She goes, "Let's see if it's something we would like." And this was like about midnight. We were getting ready to go to bed, and she puts on the first 10 minutes of it, because I'm like, "This looks cheesy. I don't think we're gonna like it." And and we watched 3 episodes that night. Like,
Right.
so like, yeah, and I think the next day we watched the rest of them. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was such
and
a yeah. The first season came out of no like we're like,
yeah.
oh, Winona's in it because like we all like Winona, right? Everyone
Oh, I had
felt
a
bad
crush
when
on
you're
her. We're the same age, I think.
yeah, and
And
when you found out she was like
back, yeah,
kleptoing stuff at the mall,
yeah,
it was like oh no, what's no Winona.
yeah,
So it was nice to see her come back, and it was like, oh, cool, Winona's in it, and it was a weird show that kind of had retro vibes to it, and I feel like they're hitting their stride in the last episode. Like it's still got a lot of good things. There's some moments that are a little too on the nose or cliche, but overall, like I like the style of it. I like the pace. The pacing is really good.
good.
Uh, I feel like everything peaks about season 3 or 4 on most series, and we're in that peak range now for the show. Because after that, everyone wants more money, or is bored with their role in it, and or is getting better opportunities in other movies and stuff from the fame of the show. Uh, so I think we're at almost the height. Probably, I mean, depending on how next season's goes, that'll probably be the peak of it, and then you know, 2 more seasons we probably shouldn't watch as everyone as
Yeah,
they figure out a way to wrap it up.
that's right. I
Um,
really appreciate shows that can know when to go out at the top of their game, and it's rare
what
to
comes to
find them.
mind? Yeah, what comes to mind? Can you think of any off the top of your head that?
I had one and I lost it, but oh, uh, what's the name of it? It was on Showtime. It was like the monsters thing. Penny Dreadful.
Penny
They
Dreadful
did,
was a good show.
yeah, 3 seasons,
Yep,
and that last season was one of their best, and they finished it up, and it was like, it left you wanting more, but I'm like, they told a complete story,
yep.
and there was some stories that could have gone further, but her story was pretty much, she was the story, the Eva Green's character.
Yeah, Eva
Uh,
Green. She was amazing. So Penny Dreadful, that is a hit. Anyone that hasn't seen that, watch some Penny Dreadful. That was
yeah,
one I felt
great
like I
show, and I
stumbled across
I
it,
feel
and
like I don't want to talk too much about it, because if you haven't seen it, like, there's so much stuff that could be spoilers,
it's
like
so
just
good.
talking about it.
Eva
Yeah.
Green did an amazing job in a lot of like her acting performances in several scenes was incredible. Like when
Oh
she was
yeah.
in trances and the seances and things like that. Like those
There's
are such
one spoiler. There's a scene with her. She's talking to like a possessed ventriloquist dummy, and
mm,
it, on paper, that would sound so stupid, and just talking about it sounds stupid, but it is amazing, that scene. Like, I get chills, like,
she
watching it,
was
and her
so good.
performance. Yeah.
Such
And
difficult performances too, which I don't think she gets enough. A lot of those performances would be exhausting to like try and just screaming and writhing and taking on different personalities,
yeah,
talking in different tones and things like that. Like, oh, that's
yeah,
very hard to do. And very hard to do
yeah,
where it doesn't come off cheesy, right? Where
yeah,
like exactly what you said, like a lot of the scenes gave you chills where you're like, ooh, this good.
yeah.
Whatever she does next, I hope
And
she picks well and crushes it.
yeah, I mean, that's been off the air for quite a while now, but yeah, that was a nice little run. And they actually didn't even, I mean, it's 3 seasons now, but when you were watching even that final episode, you had no idea that there wasn't going to be another season.
Right.
Um,
I don't think
because they
they had
didn't
that
they didn't
idea either.
reveal. No, they knew that that was going to be their final season, but they
Oh,
didn't want to
really?
reveal it because they didn't want you going in thinking that this is the last season.
Mm.
Uh, because it had more of an impact, the way the story was told, and
Yep.
uh, and I thought the way they did it was quite brilliant.
Yep.
But
So well casted
yeah,
too. Like
oh
everyone that
yeah,
they picked
everybody in
for.
that was great. Even like
Yep.
Josh Hartnett, which I'm not a fan of, he was great in that show.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say. Is like
Yeah,
Hartnett, not known for being the greatest actor, but killed it in
yeah,
Penny Dreadful. Like played his role
yeah.
perfectly, believable. Like is Hartnett a better actor than we think? Is
I think a lot of people are better actors than we think. I mean, look at the prequels, Star Wars prequels, like full of great actors doing horrible acting because it's the direction.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they're
Yeah.
allowed to give a horrible performance, and they're like, good enough. Next.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, no, the problem was also like they did too many takes on that. I think like Lucas was known for doing like 30, 40 takes on something, and
Right.
by the end, like the actor, they've lost their groove. They're just saying the lines, you know, and they're getting different direction every time. They don't know what to do, and so
Right.
it's like, I hate sand, you know. It gets everywhere.
Yeah. I remember the I forget which episode it was, but the whole love scenes between Vader and Natalie Portman when they were like growing to love each other, and they were in the flowery field with the purple waterfalls behind. So we had seen it for school for a class. It was like the assignment to go watch it or whatever. And we were like, oh man, there's so much bad, cheesy shit in this. So the next time we brought a bunch of beers in a backpack. And every time one of those scenes would happen, we'd like make sure we cracked and everyone could hear the crack of the beer. So we were getting like audible, because like they're having the picnic with the purple waterfalls, and we just because yeah, there was some bad, and I never thought I'd have that thought until the newest ones were back, because you know you were hating on Lucas a lot of times for what he was doing with some of the stuff, but at least he gave you that.
Lucas,
go ahead.
He was good when he wasn't in complete control. Like these directors, once they get to a certain point, and it's like it's just them and only their ideas, and they think they're gods because they did a good job, but they didn't realize that the reason they did a good job is you had a lot of people telling you some of these ideas were bad. And,
right.
Same thing happened with M. Night Shyamalan too. It's just like, you know,
so
you did a couple
potential.
good movies, and then suddenly you're doing bomb after bomb because you're not taking people's advice.
Well, right after Sixth Sense, they started telling him he was Hitchcock.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Now he's like got a big head. But I heard a story that Bruce Willis rejected Sixth Sense like 20 times, sent it back to him for rewriting, and until he would say yes to it. And so, he had to do 20 revisions just to get Bruce Willis to sign on. And so I wonder how bad it would have been if they went with his first draft, which is what I think has happened. Now he's just going with his first draft.
Well, and some of the later movies haven't been, but
yeah, the most recent ones have been pretty good.
Yeah, the most recent ones were pretty good, but I remember in the middle of all those Marky Mark trees kill people movie.
Oh God, the Happening.
The Happening, yeah. My friend was like, well, we just call him instead of M. Night Shyamalan, where he was called.
Oh, I lost that. What did you say?
He was calling him "Boo, fuck you."
Oh,
because that. Like, oh yeah, the new "Boo, fuck you" movie. Because they were just
The Happening. I figured out the key to watching The Happening is go in with the mindset that it's a comedy, and you'll enjoy it much more. And because Mark Wahlberg gives it's a pretty good comedic performance if you go in with that mindset.
Man, talk about somebody that peaks. He peaked at Boogie Nights, and I don't care if I never see Mark Wahlberg in a movie again.
Seems like I just saw him in something recently. He was pretty good. I forget what it was.
I don't know. The most hilarious recent one is the Transformers he was in. He had he has the hot daughter in it. He has the hot daughter in it, and he has sexual chemistry with his daughter on screen. And you're like, ew, what? What in the world was going on?
I remember that.
Where you let this happen? There's like
Oh,
sexual.
Fathers
There's
2. That's what it was.
Fathers too. Yeah,
Yeah, I watched that.
that's a pretty good
That's a
one. Where he's
that's a good
like
Mark Wahlberg movie. Yeah.
the deadbeat dad, and then with Ferrell, right? Isn't Will Ferrell, or is that?
No. This is it's a based off a true story of a boxer
Oh
uh
no, I haven't heard
who
of this.
basically becomes a priest, and
Oh, okay.
it's recent. It's like it just came out, and I watched that and I was like, oh, he's good in that.
He does a good job sometimes, and then other
Yeah.
times it's like Pain and Gain was really good too.
Oh, I need to see the Uncharted movie.
Oh, don't
Uh,
skip it.
I know. I know.
Definitely
I
skip it.
love the game, and I just kind of want
The
to see it
games
just
are
to see
great.
what they've done to it.
I mean, they don't watch it. If you like the game, just keep your fond memories of the game. The last one
yeah.
was amazing. If you played
The thing is,
Uncharted
I know
4,
it's going to be a wreck of a movie. I just need to see it
yeah,
just to see it, you know? So I don't have any expectations. It won't ruin the game for me.
yeah. I mean,
I can't, yeah.
if you're gonna just watch 20 minutes and then be like, and then go to bed, it's a good one to go to sleep to. You'll watch and
Yeah.
it'll be like, okay, I see, I see what you guys did here.
But I noticed he was in that too, so that's why I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Which Tom Holland. I'm a Tom Holland fan. I think he's killing
Yeah.
it in most of the stuff he's in. And I had higher hopes for Uncharted, but again, gave it to the wrong director. Somebody that didn't get why. Uncharted needs to be Indiana Jones, not Transformers. I guess that's the
Oh,
best way to
they
say
went
it.
that way with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like all this over the top action. It's kind of what they did with the last Tomb Raiders, where it just became this action spectacle and less about the treasure hunting adventure part of things, which is that's the draw, really, in my mind at least, is like treasure hunt stuff is fun. It always has been since you were a little kid that,
Yeah.
we're going to go on this adventure and solve these mysteries. And at the end of it, there's some sort of pot of gold or, something of immense, unmeasurable value that we're going to find. Uh,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah,
then
those
they
were
just,
always the adventure movies were always my favorites. Like the old like Sinbad movies, with
mm,
the stop frame animation, and
right.
what was the other one? Like
The,
they go to this island where there's like all these giant creatures and giant crabs, and they meet Captain Nemo there as
ah,
well. Forget the name of that movie, but love stuff like that. It's like, it's fantasy adventure,
mm-hmm.
but set in the real world, and in the vein of like King Kong and things like that.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's much more what these movies should have been. Well, the Tomb Raider just changed. I think it just went up for sale, and I think somebody new is buying it. So it'll
okay.
get rebooted under new ownership, which I think will be good for it because what's her the last girl that was Laura, she was good, but again, it was just the
I don't
Dutch
even think I saw that
actress.
one.
The Dutch actress that was in I'm drawing a blank on everything now. The
You're getting to that 2 hour mark almost.
yeah, we are. It's time to wrap it up.
That's when
The
the brain starts to
was
fade.
was that Turing Test movie where she was the android
Oh yeah. Ex Machina, right?
ex
Is
machina?
that
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
she was the last Laura Croft.
Oh,
Y
okay.
yeah, and I'm forgetting her name, which is tragic because she's an excellent actress, won an Oscar.
That was a good movie, Ex Machina.
Yeah, it really was. He does a bunch of cool. I've liked everything that he's done so far.
Yeah.
Uh, and the last one with Natalie Portman. Um, Also drawing a blank. It is that 2 hour mark. What
Yeah.
was that one? The Netflix one where shoot, where they go investigate like there's like ripple in basically the ripple in the universe. It's like a physics ripple. When you go inside, there's all this weird alien stuff going on, and then Natalie Portman finds the alien at the end of it.
Huh. Did I
Oh,
not see this?
jeez. What is it, Russ? Uh, Same director as Ex Machina. This is terrible. I don't know this. This is like right in my wheelhouse.
I gotta look it up.
Yeah, that one's really good too. Really, really good sci-fi feel to it. They don't over explain and they don't go too vague with it. It's just this interesting that keeps you. Annihilation is the name of it, and it just keeps you thinking the whole time, and
Okay, maybe
it
I didn't see
really
it.
has a good sense of wonder with it. Some people had beef with the ending of it or whatever, but I think it is good. I think they hit it just right. But yeah, like we said, I know you got other things to
Oh, I
do.
did see that. Yeah. Okay.
Right? Yeah, where they
I
go
had to
on
look.
the.
Once you set that in my head, and like, yeah, I remember it now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that was
good
a good
flick.
one. The alien was a little weird at the end. It's always tough to visualize alien. Like, what would the alien be? What would it?
Yeah,
Really, it
and
can be anything, and that's the problem, right?
yeah, it's some of the best creature movies are the ones where you don't see the creatures that much. Like, Alien was a great example of that, where it's just like
Yep.
you got bits and pieces of it, and you see those costumes in full light, they look stupid too. It's like,
Oh, absolutely. The mystery is the true horror.
yeah,
The more, just where, and this is a perfect way to full circle back to where we started. The more you leave it into your head and brain be the storyteller, the
yeah,
better everything is. As
yeah.
soon as you show the monster too fast, it's like, oh, okay, I know, not that scary. And then once you're not scared, then the rest of the movie can't be scary because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, there's this stupid monster again.
It's like in Jaws, Spielberg says like part of the success of that movie was because the shark looked so bad that he couldn't use a lot of the shots with it. So
Right.
and it ended up being better because it made the shark scarier when you couldn't see it.
Yeah. It's the mystery beneath the ocean.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
deep dark water creeps me out so bad. Like that's all you need. Just like there's something down there. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Even the images where they show the tiny diver and then it's just like blackness beneath.
Yeah.
Like gives me goosebumps just
Yeah.
thinking about it.
No.
Even being in open water, even in a lake or something, it's creepy when you're like in
Yeah.
the middle of a lake swimming.
I don't like it when I can't see the bottom. It
No.
creeps me out.
Yeah.
I
Anything
try
can
not to
drag
think
me
about it.
down.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, we are hitting that 2 hour mark, and I know you got
All
other
right.
things to do today. Thank you so much for coming on. It was an excellent
Yeah, thanks for having me.
conversation. Yeah, and
Yeah.
thanks for sharing all your work and everything too. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, you.
And yeah, we'll wrap it up and hopefully have back on at some point.
Sure.
Yeah. So thanks for watching, everybody, and be doing another next Sunday as well. So come back in, check it out, or come by any of the social medias at Punk and check out more of Jeff at his Twitch at.
That guy Baldrax
That's
on
it.
Twitch.
Yeah, let's go. Thank you. Smash that like, subscribe, do all the rest of that good stuff. Appreciate it, everybody.